I'm a Navy veteran. I'm actually decorated with the Humanitarian Service Medal as well as the Navy Achievement Medal and a few others. I had a flag letter of commendation from my 3-star Admiral. Actually, most of my awards, they came from 3 separate 3-star Admirals. So I did a lot of high-level work in the Navy in terms of public relations, and a lot of it was actually fairly political because we were dealing with the impact of the United States and the way that we looked overseas in East Asia. And a lot of people don't know this, but actually, you know, Southeast Asia has more Muslim Americans than the Middle East. Indonesia and Malaysia are they're the biggest Muslim countries, and not many people know that. And so I had the pleasure of doing a lot of work over there, as well as working with the aftermath of the tsunami and nuclear disaster in 2011 in Japan. Since then, I came back from serving overseas, decided to finish up my bachelor's degree. I had already gotten my associate's while I was in the Navy, and I got a letter from the University of Michigan saying, you're going to be charged out-of-state tuition because you were serving in the military. And they say that all politics starts out as personal, and it was very personal. I was going to have to pay an extra $15,000 a year just because I had served my country when I had grown up in Dearborn, went to Dearborn High. You know, my parents had paid taxes in Michigan their whole lives. And so when I found out that other veterans were experiencing this issue, and it looked like we were just being, by default, marked as out-of-state students, that's when I started organizing veterans across the state. And we actually, you know, we took up the issue to the Board of Regents, and then I also held some press conferences. The PR background helped out. And, you know, I was on the cover of the Detroit News and at the top of the 6 o'clock news for Channel 4. And within about 6 months, we were able to get the university to give up the policy. And that's saving, to this day, veterans about $9 million a year, just in Michigan. Around that time, that the first person ever said, you know, you should think about running for office, I really wanted to be someone who would make real changes. And I saw, when I was serving overseas, how dramatically different it was, the difference between our infrastructure in the United States, our educational systems in the United States, as well as just our general attitude towards our long-term health as a democracy, and the way that countries like Japan and China and South Korea are approaching those same issues. And when I was serving, we were in the middle of the recession. So I had family members who were unemployed. While I'm seeing where I was serving, these countries were booming. And it really impressed upon me the need for us to change our policy. A lot of people fear failure. And what I learned is that failure is meaningful. And it gives you experiences that you can learn from. I actually think having lost my first race better prepares me for this than anything else. One of the things that I've heard from a lot of politicians, and that I really believe is true, is that it's actually important for a politician to lose the first time. And there's a really simple reason for this, and it's because if you start out winning, you're not as compassionate towards those who lose. It really forces you to humble yourself. Different people make decisions differently. Right? Some people don't just want you to knock on their door. They want to hear it from family members. They want to hear it from other people in their community. And so I had taken a form of communication with the Arab American community that wasn't necessarily appropriate, right? I was just going straight in and knocking on their door, when in reality I really needed to work through those networks of family and relationships, and that was an important aspect of it that I hadn't learned yet. One of the things that we really struggle with in Dearborn politics in particular is that on both sides of town there's a lot of racial voting that occurs. You know, where a lot of people either won't vote for an Arab American candidate because they're an Arab American, or they won't vote for a white candidate because they're not Arab American. And that's a barrier that I think really prevents us from having a healthier sort of civic society in Dearborn, Because when every vote isn't up for grabs, it actually disempowers the community that engage in that kind of politics. And this is something that cuts across all sides of Dearborn. And whether people realize it or not, when their vote isn't up for grabs, when they're not up for contest, when they default to the person of the same race as them, what they're actually doing is they're giving politicians a pass. I think we need a lot more energy on the commission. I think that the commission hasn't been as active as it could be on so many different issues. I think the best example is probably the jail project. You had almost $500 million of your own money wasted over something that was visible, right? It's something that we could go out and we knew that this project wasn't finishing or being finished on time. And that wasn't even addressed as an issue really until it became a major public issue. So we had a change of administration. We've had, so many things happen since then. And now we're embarking on a new jail project. And the stakes are just too high to have people who, aren't interested in really taking an active stance on this. We don't have anybody on the commission who's under the age of 50, so we really don't have any new ideas or representation for young people, and that's something where I know I can make a big difference. Look at the results I've gotten. Every time I've engaged on an issue, they've never been easy or simple things, and they've always taken months, sometimes years to resolve. And I've followed every political issue I've fought for to their conclusion. After 9/11, it was pretty contentious because I was going to Dearborn High at the time, and I remember the day after, the cafeteria was just completely split. Everyone had essentially self-segregated, white and Arab, within the cafeteria, and this is something I'd never seen before. Because as a young kid, I grew up here. You're just used to everybody being on the same level. And seeing that almost default move towards separation really frightened me in a way, because it challenged something that I had always believed, which is that we were sort of all together in this.